Unit 5, Section 2. Our rules for exponents. Rules on multiplying. You need to always make sure you multiply the coefficients, and then we're going to add the exponents. Our rules on dividing, you need to divide or reduce the coefficients and subtract the exponents. You should always subtract our top exponent minus the bottom exponent and put the answer on the top. The rules for a power to power. You should distribute the exponent to every other exponent in parentheses. Some examples on how we do these. Our first examples are for multiplication. In order to multiply, you first need to make sure that the bases are the same. Here we have x to the second power times x to the second power. Since I have the same base, I'm going to have x to the 2 plus 2. So my final answer is x to the fourth power. You add your exponents together. In example 2, our rules say that I take my coefficients, my 3 and my 2, and I multiply those together. 3 times 2 gives me 6. I next check, I have x and I have x. They have the same base, so I'm going to have x to the 4 plus 10 power, because these are my exponents here. So my final answer will be 6x to the 14th power. For example 3, again we start with my coefficients. I have 7 and 4, so I'm going to multiply 7 times 4, which is 28. I next take my x variable, so I'm going to have x to the 5 plus 9, each of these exponents. I will then have y to the 3 plus 6. So my final answer will be 28 x to the 14th power, y to the 9th power. For multiplying, you add your exponents together. For division, again, we always take care of our coefficients first. So here I'm going to take care of this one. I have 15 divided by 5. 15 divided by 5 is 3. I then have x and x. So I'm going to have x to the 5 minus 2. We subtract our exponents instead of adding. And then I will have my y's. So I have y to the 8 minus 1. Even though 1 is not written there, it's understood to be there. So therefore, my final answer will be 3 x to the 3rd power, y to the 7th power. On my next example here, 16 does not go into 8 evenly, so I just need to reduce my fraction. So I have 8 over 16. That's going to reduce to 1 over 2, so I'm going to place my 2 on the bottom. On top here, I'm going to have x, and I have 7 and 2, so I'm going to have 7 minus 2. Then I have z to the first minus z to the 1 minus 1, because they're both understood to have a 1 here. So I'm going to have on top x to the 5th power, z to the 0 power over 2. Now z to the 0 power is 1. Any number to the 0 power is 1. So my final answer would be x to the 5th power over 2. For my power to power, here I have to take the one on the outside of the parentheses and distribute it to every exponent on the inside. So I'm going to multiply each exponent by 6. So I now have b to the 6 times 4, which is 24, and then c to the 6 times 2, which is 12. And for this one would be my final answer. For example 7, I have to remember that this is really 3 to the 1st power, and I have to distribute this 4 on the outside of the parentheses to every one of my exponents. So I now have 3 to the 4th power, m to the 8th power, n to the 12th power. 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 3 is 12. I need to evaluate 3 to the 4th power. So I'm going to multiply 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. Multiply 3 by itself 4 times, which is 81. 81, m to the 8th power, n to the 12th power. For example 8, again I need to remember that I'm distributing this 3. There's a 1 here and a 1 here. So this one gets distributed into each of these. So I now have negative 2 to the 3rd power, x to the 3rd power, y to the 9th power. Negative 2 to the 3rd power, that means to multiply negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2, which would be then a negative 8. I have x to the 3rd power, y to the 9th power. And that would be my final answer for that one. We can then put everything together for our last examples here. Here, before I start anything, I'm going to distribute this 5 to every one of my exponents. So on top I have x to the 20th, y to the 30th, x to the 10th, y to the 5th. Now I follow my rules for division. My rules for division say that I have to subtract my exponents. So 20 minus 10, y equals 30, and y to the 30 minus 5. So my final answer will be x to the 10th power, y to the 25th power. Example 10 is real similar. This time I'm going to go through and simplify inside the parentheses before I do my exponent on the exterior. You can do these either way. You can simplify, you can take care of the exponent on the outside, or you can simplify the inside first. Here, I reduce my fraction. Negative 6 over 4, that becomes a negative 3 over 2. I'm going to have x to the 8 minus 5, y to the 4 minus 2. So I have negative 3 over 2, x to the 3rd, y to the 2nd. I now need to raise this to the 3rd power. I'm going to distribute this 3 to each of my exponents here. And that includes the 1 in my denominator. So I now have negative 3 to the 3rd power, x to the 9th power, y to the 6th power, over 2 to the 3rd power. So my final answer would be negative 27 x to the 9th, y to the 6th, over 8. There are a few different steps to keep up with there. For example 11. Example 11, I'm going to go back to the way we did it in example 9. I'm going to distribute my 2 in here first. So I now have 2 to the 2nd power, x to the 20th power, y to the 14th power, over 8 to the 2nd power, x to the 0 power, y to the 6th power. Simplifying, I have 4. Here I'm going to do x would be 20 minus 0, which would be 20. Y, 14 minus 6, which would be 8. On the bottom, I have already taken care of these variables here by subtraction. But here I have to do 8 to the 2nd power. 8 to the 2nd power is 64. I now have to reduce the coefficients. 4 over 64, that reduces to x to the 20th, y to the 8th, and then I would have 16 on my denominator. Each of these things can be simplified if you take your time and pay attention to what you're doing.